Firewalk Studios, I don't think they've laid anybody off. I know the director stepped down as kind of a sign of like, hey, my bad. But the studio's still going. They're still getting paychecks from Sony. And I'm not saying Concord's coming back, but given the fact that the last recorded update was 13 days ago, and there have been numerous updates to this, it wasn't like, I mean, you know, maybe there are some legal things they have to do, like because they've pulled it, and so they're having to pull data, and maybe they're having to update it to get it to run on certain dev kits that have been updated. There's a lot of explanations for this that are not, they're still sitting there in the studio going, I think we could fix this. Let's try some things. But that is absolutely a viable read into this that they have had. And I don't know, I think there's a history where you can actually see the number of updates they've done since the game basically shat the bed. These guys they've done like maybe 15 updates. And they're not going to tell you what it is, obviously. It's all encrypted and shit. But again, I agree with you guys in the chat. They should have been free to play at launch. Yeah, it should have been. But Brett Moore says it's weird. You would think Sony wouldn't want to waste their money with an entire studio twiddling their thumbs. I don't think they're twiddling their thumbs. I think they're sitting around going, can we save this? Thematically, can we change it? Can we build a new game in like 8 months that basically is using the bones of this, but with different systems? You know, can we address the problems? And I think that's incredibly wise of them. See, I disagree, Wallace. Wallace says shoulda, woulda, coulda. I don't agree. You know, I think that is, I mean, look at Blooper Team. Those guys, a lot of people, including me, they earned the fact that they were being written off by fans because they had let a lot of people down. But failure is not always permanent failure if you can learn from it. And these are a group of very talented people who made this game. I understand that you may not necessarily like the thematic of it, or you may not have liked the kind of game. And that's fine. I didn't particularly like it, but that doesn't mean there's not something there. And I'm not bringing it up because I know anything. I'm bringing it up because I'm curious. Yeah. Brett Moore says, I don't think the IP is salvageable. Yeah, they may not even be doing that. They may be looking at it and going, well, like somebody in the chat says, yeah, they're just taking some time to turn. It was Eric says they're turning everybody white, obviously, right? No, my guess is they understand the IP is gone. It's dead. But they may be looking at it and saying, how fast can we reskin this? And how fast can we make this into something that is actually marketable? I think that's cool. I think that's how you win, is you fail and you know, so, you know my opinion on that. You know, it's smart to learn from failure, not to just fire people because they fail. Layers of Fear was pretty cool. Layers of Fear, Movie Maniac, one of my favorite horror games of all time. And it was directed by the same guy who directed Silent Hill 2 and Observer. But between those, they had lots and lots and lots of games that, in my opinion, were not anywhere near as compelling as The Promise. And it's nice to know they were able to stick it out and figure out how to turn that around. That's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool. Anyway, do what you want with Concord. I don't care. I like underdogs. I like when people fall and they have support to get back up. You know how many times, I mean, you wouldn't have Sony first party without it. You know how many games we canceled Sony first party when I was there when it was PS1 era? How many games didn't work? Nobody knew what they were doing. I mean, I'm not fucking with you. I'm not lying to you. All of internal development in America, at least, because that's where I was, no one knew what we were doing. People, I got a $2 million top-down shooter greenlit and produced for 2 years before it was canceled. There was like a $3 million game called The Incredible Adventures of Tobu, I think is what it was called, which was conceptually beautiful and great art and wonderful thematics, and nobody knew what the game was until they finally fucking canceled it. But those people went on to do massive things within the Sony structure, and those lessons were applied to future games in the Sony structure. So, I mean, I would even look at Connie Booth, who is a huge reason Sony first party is still so successful. She did one game internally developed. After all these years external, she did this game with Jet Li. What was that game on PS2? Set in Chinatown, whatever it was called. Didn't do very well. She clearly didn't enjoy it because she never went back. Rise to honor, right? She never went back. And she said she learned from that, or I think what she said to herself was, you know what I'm good at? I'm good at being a great external producer. And she went on to do Uncharted with those guys and Ratchet and the Spider-Man series and a bunch of other massive hits. So, and even in the chat right now, you're bringing up like No Man's Sky. That's another great example. JB says those days at Sony are over, Jaffe. That's not the point. Those specific days are over, but the lesson of just because you fail doesn't mean you are disposable. That lesson is as old as the hills, and the people that know how to go, that is disposable, that person is not disposable. Once they hit failure, look, think what you will of me, but I spent $2 million of Sony's money on a game that was abysmally stupid, which was Dark Guns. And Sony still looked at me and said, you get to go to Santa Monica after this massive failure at the time. $2 million was a lot of money. And you get to be the creative head of Sony Santa Monica. Well, we got God of War from that. We got Sony Santa Monica from that. So, you know, don't be morons. Don't accept that failure is the end. Failure is the lesson. Failure is the gift. Run towards failure, my friend. Blackjack says, yes, Jaffe, but you have talent. Yes, and if you played Concord, you can't say none of these people had talent. It was a very well executed title. You may not have liked the theme. You may not have liked the modes. You may not have liked the business model. But does that mean that the guy or the girl who programmed the animation system, or the guy or the girl that was the CTO that got it running smoothly across the internet, or the guy or the girl that figured out how to do the aiming in a way that felt good on a controller compared to like Drawn to Death that felt terrible on a controller, does that mean they had no talent? Of course not. Of course not.